Islamic Republic of Iran Armed Forces. The Islamic Republic of Iran Armed Forces Persian, Nīrūhā-ye Eslāmi-ye, romanized, Nīrūhā-ye Mosallah-e, Jomhūri-ye Eslāmi-ye Iran are the combined military forces of Iran, comprising the Army Artesh, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Sepāh, and the law enforcement force. Iranian armed forces are the largest in the Middle East in terms of active troops. Iran's military forces are made up of approximately 610,000 active duty personnel plus 350,000 reserve and trained personnel that can be mobilized when needed, bringing the country's military manpower. These numbers do not include law enforcement force or Basij. Most of Iran's imported weapons consist of American systems purchased before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, with limited purchases from the Soviet Union in the 1990s following the Iran-Iraq War. However, the country has since then launched a robust domestic rearmament program, and its inventory has become increasingly indigenous. According to Iranian officials, most of the country's military hardware is domestically manufactured, and the country had already become an exporter of arms by the 2000s. Unable to import weapon systems from abroad due to international and U.S. sanctions, and suffering from an increasingly aging Air Force fleet, Iran has invested considerable funds into an ambitious ballistic and cruise missile program for long-range strike capability, and has manufactured different types of arms and munitions, including tanks, armored vehicles. Iran's ballistic missile and space program is an internationally hot political topic over which it has consistently refused to negotiate. Iranian authorities state that the country's missile program is not designed to deliver nuclear payloads, but used only for surgical strikes, and is therefore not relevant to any nuclear negotiations with the 5+1. All branches of the armed forces fall under the command of the General Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces. The Ministry of Defense and Armed Forces Logistics is responsible for planning logistics and funding of the armed forces and is not involved within the Field Military Operational Command. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces is the supreme leader, while the President is the second in command. History. After the coup in 1953, Iran began purchasing some weapons from Israel, the United States, and other countries of the Western Bloc. Later on, Iran began establishing its own armaments industry. Its efforts in this remained largely unrecognized internationally until recently. Following the Iranian Revolution in 1979, deteriorating relations with the U.S. resulted in international sanctions led by the U.S., including an arms embargo being imposed on Iran. Revolutionary Iran was taken by surprise by the Iraqi invasion that began the Iran-Iraq War of 1980–1988. During this conflict, there were several conflicts against the United States. From 1987, the United States Central Command sought to stop Iranian mine-laying vessels from blocking the international sea lanes through the Persian Gulf in Operation Prime Chance. The operation lasted until 1989. On April 18, 1988, the U.S. retaliated for the Iranian mining of the USS Samuel B. Roberts in Operation Praying Mantis. Simultaneously, the Iranian armed forces had to learn to maintain and keep operational their large stocks of U.S.-built equipment and weaponry without outside help due to the American-led sanctions. However, Iran was able to obtain limited amounts of American-made armaments when it was able to buy American spare parts and weaponry for its armed forces during the Iran-Contra affair. At first, deliveries came via Israel and later from the U.S. The Iranian government established a 5-year rearmament program in 1989 to replace worn-out weaponry from the Iran-Iraq War. Between 1989 and 1992, Iran spent $10 billion on arms, some of which were designed to prevent other states' naval vessels from accessing the sea, including Marines and long-range Soviet planes capable of attacking aircraft carriers. A former military-associated police force, the Iranian Gendarmerie, was merged with the National Police Shabani and Islamic Revolution committees in 1990. In 1991, the Iranian Armed Forces received a number of Iraqi military aircraft being evacuated from the Persian Gulf War of that year, most of which were incorporated into the Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force. From 2003, there have been repeated U.S. and British allegations that Iranian forces have been covertly involved in the Iraq War. In 2004, Iranian Armed Forces took Royal Navy personnel prisoner on the Shat al-Arab Arvand Rud in Persian River between Iran and Iraq. They were released 3 days later following diplomatic discussions between the UK and Iran. In 2007, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Forces also took prisoner Royal Navy personnel when a boarding party from HMS Cornwall was seized in the waters between Iran and Iraq in the Persian Gulf. They were released 13 days later. According to Juan Cole, Iran has never launched an aggressive war in modern history, and its leadership adheres to a doctrine of no first strike. The country's military budget is the lowest per capita in the Persian Gulf region besides the UAE. Since 1979, there have been no foreign military bases present in Iran. According to Article 146 of the Iranian Constitution, the establishment of any foreign military base in the country is forbidden, even for peaceful purposes. On 4 December 2011, an American Arcumenus 170 Sentinel unmanned aerial vehicle UAV was captured by Iranian forces near the city of Kashmir in northeastern Iran. In 2012, it was announced that Iran's Quds force is operating inside Syria, providing the government of Bashar al-Assad with intelligence and direction against rebel opposition. In December 2012, Iran stated it had captured an American Scan Eagle UAV that violated its airspace over the Persian Gulf. Iran later stated it had also captured 2 other Scan Eagles. In November 2015, Iranian special forces assisted in the rescue of a Russian pilot that was shot down by Turkey over Syria. In April 2016, Iran sent advisors from the 65th Airborne Special Forces Brigade to Syria in support of the government. In 2016, Revolutionary Guard Forces captured U.S. Navy personnel when their boats entered Iranian territorial waters off the coast of Farsi Island in the Persian Gulf. They were released the next day following diplomatic discussions between the U.S. and Iran. In March 2021, state TV in Iran showed footage of a missile city armed with ballistic and cruise weapons described as a new Revolutionary Guard base along the Gulf Coast. Commanders: Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Islamic Republic, in Persian, FRMKHLQW romanized, Firmanandi Kal-e-Kavaf. Brigadier General Amir Hatami Me'esser Type HTMI Minister of Defense, Major General Mohammad Bagheri SRDR SRLSHKHR PSDR MHMD BQRY Commander of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, in Persian Rais STDKHL Niwi MSLH, Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Ghariye Ashtini Me'esser Type MHMDR DQRI Ashtini Deputy Commander of General Staff of the Armed Forces, in Persian Jayanshan Rais STDKHL Niwi MSLH, Major General Yair Rahim Safavi SRDR SRLSHKHR PSDRY Hayarhim SFWY Senior Military Advisor to the Leader of the Islamic Revolution, Islamic Republic of Iran Army, in Army, Major General Abdul Rahim Mousavi SRLSHKHR BDLRhim MWSY Commander-in-Chief of the Army, in Persian FRMD KHL RTSH, Brigadier General Mohammad Hossein Dadras Me'esser Type MHMDH Sin DDRS Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Army, Rear Admiral Habiballah Sayari Madrider H. Bible Siri Chief of the Army Joint Headquarters, Brigadier General Kiamers Haydari Me'esser Type Kimmeth Hydri Commander of the Army Ground Forces, Brigadier General Aziz Nasserzade Me'esser Type Zizin Seized Commander of the Air Force, Brigadier General Aliers Asab Hafard Me'esser Type Lid DSB Haifid Commander of Air Defense Force, Rear Admiral Hossein Khanzadi Madrider H. Sin KHNZDY Commander of the Navy, Major General Hossein Salami SRDR SR Type PSDR Hsen Eslāmi-ye Commander-in-Chief of the Irq, in Persian, FRMD KHL SPH PSDRN. Rear Admiral Ali Fadavi SRDR Dritter PSDR FY Deputy Commander of the Irq. Brigadier General Mohammad Riza Nakti SRDR SR Type Basij HMDRD in QDY Chief of the Irq Joint Headquarters. Brigadier General Mohammad Pakbar SRDR SR Type PSDR MHMD PKHBWR Commander of Irq Ground Force. Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizade SRDR SR Type PSDR Malai Hjizd Commander of the Irq Aerospace Force, Pace Force. Rear Admiral Alayers Atangsiri SRDR Dritter PSDR Ladi TNG Siri, Commander of Irq Navy. Brigadier General Esmail Ghani Commander of Quds Force. Brigadier General Ghulam Reza Soleimani SRDR SR Type PSDR GLMRD Eslāmi-ye Commander of the Basij Resistance Force, Law Enforcement Force. Brigadier General Hossein Ashtari SRDR SR Type PSDR Hsen SHTRI Commander-in-Chief of the Law Enforcement Force, in Persian, FRM Nīrūhā-ye in TZMY. Structure. The Iranian Regular Military, or Islamic Republic of Iran Army, consists of the Islamic Republic of Iran Army Ground Forces, Islamic Republic of Iran Navy, Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force, and the Islamic Republic of Iran Air Defense Force. The regular armed forces have an estimated 398,000 personnel, the Islamic Republic of Iran Army Ground Forces with 350,000, of which 220,000 are conscripts, the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy with 18,000, and the Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force with 37. The Islamic Republic of Iran Air Defense Force is a branch split off from the IRIAF and has 15,000 personnel. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or Revolutionary Guards, has an estimated 190,000 personnel in 5 branches: its own Navy, Aerospace Force and Ground Forces, and the Quds Force Special Forces. The Basij is a paramilitary volunteer force controlled by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. Its membership is a matter of controversy. Iranian sources claim a membership of 12.6 million, including women, of which perhaps 600,000 are combat capable. There are a claimed 2,500 battalions, of which some are composed of full-time personnel. Global Security, or quotes a 2005 study by the Center for Strategic and International Studies estimating 90,000 active duty full-time uniformed members, 300,000 reservists, and a total of 11 million men that can be mobilized if need be. Cyberwarfare. It has been reported that Iran is one of the 5 countries that has a cyber army capable of conducting cyber warfare operations. It has also been reported that Iran has immensely increased its cyber warfare capability since the post-presidential election unrest. Furthermore, China has accused the United States of having initiated a cyber war against Iran through websites such as Twitter and YouTube and employing a hacker brigade for the purpose of fomenting unrest in Iran. It has also been reported in early 2010 that 2 new garrisons for cyber warfare have been established at Zanjan and Isfahan. Size. Budget. Iran's 2019 defense budget was estimated to be $17.04 billion by IAS. Defense industry. Under the last Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Iran's military industry was limited to assembly of foreign weapons. In the assembly lines that were put up by American firms such as Bell, Litton, and Northrop, Iranian workers put together a variety of helicopters, aircraft, guided missiles, electronic components, and tanks. In 1973, the Iran Electronics Industries II was established. The company was set up in a first attempt to organize the assembly and repair of foreign-delivered weapons. The Iranian Defense Industries Organization was the first to succeed in taking a step into what could be called military industry by reverse engineering Soviet RPG-7, BM-21, and SAM-7 missiles in 1979. Nevertheless, most of Iran's weapons before the Islamic Revolution were imported from the United States and Europe. Between 1971 and 1975, the Shah went on a buying spree, ordering $8 billion in weapons from the United States alone. This alarmed the United States Congress, which strengthened a 1968 law on arms exports in 1976 and renamed it the Arms Export Control Act. Still, the United States continued to sell large amounts of weapons to Iran until the 1979 Islamic Revolution. After the Islamic Revolution, Iran found itself severely isolated and lacking technological expertise. Because of economic sanctions and a weapons embargo put on Iran by the United States, it was forced to rely on its domestic arms industry for weapons and spare parts, since there were very few countries willing to do business with Iran. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards were put in charge of creating what is today known as the Iranian military industry. Under their command, Iran's military industry was enormously expanded, and with the Ministry of Defense pouring investment into the missile industry, Iran soon accumulated a vast arsenal of missiles. Since 1992, it has also produced its own tanks, armored personnel carriers, radar systems, guided missiles, Marines military vessels, and fighter planes. Iran is also producing its own submarines. In recent years, official announcements have highlighted the development of weapons such as the Fajr-3 MIRV, Hoot, Kausar, Fate-110, Shahab-3 missile systems, and a variety of unmanned aerial vehicles, at least one of which Israel claims has been used to spy on its territory. In 2006, an Iranian UAV acquired and allegedly tracked the American aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan for 25 minutes without being detected, before returning safely to its base. On November 2, 2012, Iran's Brigadier General Hassan Saifi reported that the Iranian army had achieved self-sufficiency in producing military equipment, and that the abilities of Iranian scientists have enabled the country to make significant progress in this field. He was quoted saying, "Unlike Western countries which hide their new weapons and munitions from all, the Islamic Republic of Iran's army is not afraid of displaying its latest military achievements, and all countries must become aware of Iran's progress in producing weaponry." UAV program. Iran has produced several unmanned aerial vehicle UAV, which can be used for reconnaissance and combat operations. Iran has also claimed to have downed, captured, and later reverse-engineered U.S. and Israeli drones. Iranian drones have seen extensive combat during the Syrian civil war as well as by the Houthi movement during the Yemeni civil war, mostly against Saudi targets. Ballistic missile program. On November 2, 2006, Iran fired unarmed missiles to begin 10 days of military simulations. Iranian state television reported dozens of missiles were fired, including Shahab-2 and Shahab-3 missiles. The missiles had ranges from 300 km to up to 2,000 km. Iranian experts have made some changes to Shahab-3 missiles, installing cluster warheads in them with the capacity to carry 1,400 bombs. These launches came after some United States-led military exercises in the Persian Gulf on October 30, 2006, meant to train for blocking the transport of weapons of mass destruction. Iran is also believed to have started the development of an ICBM/URBM missile project, known as Gadaminus-110, with a range of 3,000 km. The program is believed to be a parallel of the advancement of a satellite launcher named Iris. Iran also dedicated underground ballistic missile programs. Weapons of mass destruction. Iran started a major campaign to produce and stockpile chemical weapons after a truce was agreed with Iraq after 1980-88 Iran-Iraq War. However, Iran ratified the Chemical Weapons Convention in 1997. Iranian troops and civilians suffered tens of thousands of casualties from Iraqi chemical weapons during the 1988 Iran-Iraq War. Even today, more than 24 years after the end of the Iran-Iraq War, about 30,000 Iranians are still suffering and dying from the effects of chemical weapons employed by Iraq during the war. The need to manage the treatment of such a large number of casualties has placed Iran's medical specialists in the forefront of the development of effective treatment regimens for chemical weapons victims, and particularly for those suffering from exposure to mustard gas. Iran ratified the Biological Weapons Convention in 1973. Iran has advanced biological and genetic engineering research programs supporting an industry that produces vaccines for both domestic use and export. Military aid. In 2013, Iran was reported to supply money, equipment, technological expertise, and unmanned aerial vehicles drones to the Syrian government and Hezbollah during the Syrian civil war, and to the Iraqi government and its state-sponsored organizations, the Popular Mobilization Forces and Peshmerga during war on ISIL.